What is up, everybody? Can you hear me? Trade deadline did not disappoint today. My goodness. Are you kidding me? That was wild day. Threw off all of my plans. I couldn't stop refreshing Twitter today. I'm going to give this just a second to say hi to everybody in the chat, and then this is going to be a bit of like a live podcast type of deal. I think I'm actually going to upload this to the Fully Inflated Football podcast, as well as it'll get posted here as a live stream. Good opportunity to remind you guys, if you are not subbed up to my Fully Inflated Football podcast channel, here is that link. Go check it out. Or just search Fully Inflated Football wherever you get your podcast. So we got 188 people in the house. Just jumped up to 220. Just going to give it one more minute here, and then we'll get off, get this thing going here. We're up to 240. Hope everybody's had a good day. We're going to be talking about every single trade that happened today. A couple of the ones that happened. We're going to talk about McCaffrey a little bit. So it's going to be a fun stream. Up to 290. Good to see everybody's excitement popping in here for the stream. And yeah, the deadline is officially over. It looks like we got one last-second trade there. Nahim Hines to the Bills. We'll talk about that. Maybe we can figure out what the compensation is there. I would guess that would be like a third-round pick, probably. Definitely interesting. All right, should we get started? So I'm gonna make you guys wait just a little bit for the Packers rant. I want to talk about a couple of these trades first. Let's get this thing off on a good note, and then we'll get into the Packers. But welcome in everybody to the trade deadline reactions show. Here we're going to be going through every single trade deadline move that has happened, and we're going to be talking about also a move that did not happen with the Green Bay Packers and the basically public outcry about what the hell are the Packers doing. We will talk about that here today. Thank you, everybody, joining me here live. We're at 430 viewers right now. Awesome to see you guys here. Really appreciate you watching. If you have any super chats, hold on to them till we get through all of the trade reactions, because I will answer any super chat questions as a bit of a mailbag here. And this is going to turn into a full go episode of the Fully Inflated Football podcast. So for anybody here in the chat not followed on YouTube, I'm going to drop that link a couple times. That is the link to my Fully Inflated Football podcast channel, where we've been uploading all of our episodes this year. So I will put this whole stream up as an episode for the podcast. And for the regular listeners of the podcast, I don't know if I'm going to do a game reaction episode this week, just because we've got studs and duds coming at the end of the week, and just a lot going on here on the channel. So just a heads up there. This is a podcast episode. Let's get into it. I want to start with a couple of trades, the bigger trades, before we kind of talk about the Packers and all that crap. Let's start with the Roquan Smith trade. And it ends up being a Roquan Smith, the Bears Pro Bowl / All-Pro caliber linebacker, is heading to the Baltimore Ravens for a 2nd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. And this was one of those players that has been kind of rumored that he might be potentially traded, a Bears fan favorite, and it's definitely one of those players that it's hard for the Bears fans to part with it. But I get it for the Bears. I really do. And those that have followed this channel know that I'm a little bit more against investing in paying linebackers. I just think it's really hard to make an impact at that position on a week-to-week basis, just by the nature of the position. That's a group that's constantly getting exploited by all of this play action, RPOs. It's just tough. It's, to me, possibly the least valuable position on the football field, maybe even more so than running back, as we've kind of seen a resurgence in the value of running back lately. So I do get it from the Bears' perspective, saying this is not a player that we think makes a $20 million impact on our defense, on our system. You know, Matt Eberflus paid a guy like Darius Leonard in Indianapolis, and you know, we don't need to get into Darius Leonard, but I do think Eberflus feels like he can plug players into his system and get good play at that group that isn't worth $20 million long term. And that's probably about what it's going to cost Roquan. I think Fred Warner came in around 18. So, you know, the Ravens trading for him knowing they're going to have to pay him big bucks. But that said, the other reason I'm kind of anti-linebacker is it's so hard to get these guys to actually develop and become star players. And Roquan has developed and is a star player. So you look at some of these guys like maybe Kenneth Walker for the Chargers, Quay Walker for the Packers, raw, athletic, toolsy linebackers that teams spent first-round picks. Hell, the Ravens themselves have gone through this with Patrick Queen, right? He's had his ups and downs, to say the least. You know, to get a guy that has actually figured out the position that might be the hardest position in the league to figure out right now, there is value in that for a team like the Ravens who's trying to compete right now. So basically what I'm getting at is I understand this from both teams' perspectives. I can see the Bears looking at this and say, look, Roquan, we love you. We love the energy you bring. We know the fans love you. We've got a great history of linebackers in this organization, but we're not going to value this position group. And I can't really argue with that. And I think the return is just fine for that. And for the Ravens, inversely, I can see them saying, you know what, we did fail with a Patrick Queen, even though he's playing a little bit better. And instead of paying Patrick Queen or having to invest highly in linebacker again, let's go invest in Roquan Smith. So what I'm going to be doing here as we go through these trades is issuing a like it, love it, not sure about it, or don't get it reaction. And some people are saying the stream dropped. Can you hear me? Are you with me? Please tell me we didn't have any technical difficulties here. Just going to wait a second on the chat to let me know if I'm with you or if we got to fix this thing here. Just let me know in the chat. Stream's good. We always get this around the 10-minute mark where a couple people say the stream dropped and it's just fine. So we're all good. Let's keep rolling. Yeah, I like it for both sides, for the Bears and the Ravens. I do think it's, you know, for a Ravens defense, it is an upgrade. I don't know how big of an upgrade any linebacker can truly make, but the Ravens have been figuring some stuff out defensively lately, playing much better football than they were heading into the year, and I think this could be you know, a nice way to solidify the middle of that defense moving forward. So I like it for both sides. I don't necessarily love it for either sides. I think that is a lot to pay for a linebacker if you are the Ravens. And for the Bears, that's a player that fans are going to miss, and it's going to take a little bit of energy out of that defense. And eventually you're going to have to find a linebacker, right? So I like it for both teams. I don't necessarily love it for both teams. All right. Next up is going to be TJ Hawkinson, traded this morning, kind of kickstarting the trade deadline early on. Lions tight end was the 8th overall pick, and a rare interdivision trade here. TJ Hawkinson getting traded to the Minnesota Vikings for a 2nd and a 3rd round pick this year, and the Vikings are going to give 2 4th round picks back to the Lions. So TJ Hawkinson, I do think, is a little bit more of a name than he is a great player. And I saw a tweet from somebody this morning, and I can't remember who it was, but they said, you know, players can still be good or great players and also be overrated. And that's probably the case with TJ Hawkinson. Drafted 8th overall, the stigma that comes with being an Iowa tight end. He has not been some superstar tight end, but he has been a very good tight end. For those familiar with a Hunter Henry for the New England Patriots, I see very similar games from those guys. Reliable hands, pretty good after the catch, pretty good athlete, but not some elite separator at the tight end position or some elite route runner. Someone in the chat saying the 3rd round pick is a 2024 3rd round pick, so it's a future 3rd. But yeah, just a solid high-end starter at tight end, but not some incredible difference maker at the position, and a guy that trading for him is probably going to cost a little bit more than it would for someone that maybe wasn't the 8th overall pick. Like, could Hunter Henry have been had for a 5th round pick? Maybe. I don't know. But probably not this much for a guy like Hunter Henry. But he's still a good player for the Vikings at a tight end position that they've really struggled with. Irv Smith, getting towards the end of his contract, he's really struggled with drops and grasping this offense. Doesn't have the full size to be a full-on blocker. He makes a ton of sense for this Vikings team. So I think he is an addition. He provides some reliability underneath in the receiving game, provides a little bit of extra run after catch there, and he provides a little bit of an upgrade as a run blocker over, say, Irv Smith. So I like the trade for the Vikings. I don't love the trade. It is a lot to give up for a tight end, but he's going to make an impact there, and it's tough to be too hard on that trade. As for the Lions, very similar logic with the Bears. It's a position that is a pretty replaceable crop. There is a good tight end class coming in. Everything I've heard is this is a kind of generational tight end class. Got to always be careful with that kind of stuff, but that's something you got to consider. I know the Notre Dame kid's really good. Georgia, I think, has like 2 tight ends. Again, I'm pretty behind in my draft prep, but something that the Lions are probably looking ahead at there is, okay, we can maybe take this 2nd round pick, get a player of Hawkinson's caliber, or maybe a 3rd round pick, and you don't have to pay him like the Vikings are going to have to pay TJ Hawkinson. So I understand it from the Lions' perspective. I think they do have a lot of kind of playmakers coming through the pipeline there with someone like Jamison Williams, hopefully coming back. So, or getting in the mix there. So another trade where I like it for both sides. A little bit rich for the Vikings, but I still think it helps them win and win now. So I like that process. And for the Lions, I like the process of thinking that's maybe a bit of an overrated player because of what the previous regime may have spent on the guy. All right, we're going to talk about one more trade here, and then we'll get into Chase Claypool and then the Packers rant that you guys are all awaiting here that I'm excited for. I actually want to rewind a little bit and talk about Christian McCaffrey, who was traded a couple weeks ago, but we haven't really had time to focus in on this trade and issue my opinions on it. So bear with me as we rewind the clock just a little bit here. So the Niners traded for the all-pro running back of the Panthers, Christian McCaffrey, a 2nd round pick, a 3rd round pick, and a 4th round pick this year for a running back, which I am like hardwired to say, what are you doing? That is stupid. An injury-prone running back at that. McCaffrey's had a really hard time staying healthy the last couple of years. So I'm like hardwired to look at this and say, that's dumb. What are you doing? Especially for the Niners, who have churned out players at that position group, have already kind of made a mockery of themselves for spending a 3rd round pick on Trey Sermon, despite the fact that they've hit these guys, undrafted free agents. Elijah Mitchell, a 6th round pick. They do it again this year. They spent a 3rd round pick on Ty Davis Price out of LSU. So it's like the Niners don't really understand the value of running back around the league. I think that's very clear. But this last weekend, getting to watch him, Christian McCaffrey, play in his full first start with the Niners, it just made sense, man. It just made sense. And it was one of those things where it's like, this kind of feels like a little bit of the missing piece. You've got Debo as your kind of flex playmaker type. Ayuk is your wide receiver. Kittle's your tight end. You've got your H-back, Kyle Juszczyk. And now into the Shanahanigans offense, you are bringing the most versatile running back in the entire league. He's just a football player, man. And the aesthetic with this Niners team just makes so much sense. He's a guy who his dad, I believe, would have played with John Lynch for the Denver Broncos. He's a Stanford guy, I don't know if he's born and raised, but he's at least, he's a Niners guy. It just makes so much sense. And can't you just picture Christian McCaffrey getting inducted to the Hall of Fame as a San Francisco 49er? I don't know. I think, yes, it's a lot to give up. Yes, it's a risk that he might get hurt, but it just feels right, man. He comes out and gets a triple crown in his first start with the Niners. You talk about Kyle Shanahan and how versatile he is as a playmaker and how he just throws all these, different, distraction here and player lined up at a different position than he's supposed to be lined up at there, and just the misdirection and the Shanahanigans at their best. McCaffrey comes out in his first start. He throws a touchdown. He gets a touchdown reception, and he runs for a touchdown. So much explosiveness, the reliability in the receiving game, the ability to get upfield and make a tough catch when Jimmy Garoppolo's extending a play, catching checkdowns and providing that for Jimmy Garoppolo to keep the chains alive. I'm kind of in on Christian McCaffrey. It just kind of feels right. So I'm not going to harp on the Niners. It was a lot to give up. I'm not going to say I love it because there is still a risk that McCaffrey gets hurt. This is a team that doesn't have a first-round pick, and they're sitting there and hoping that they could, repatch their offensive line or some other position groups. But I do like this trade for the 49ers, where most of the public discourse is this was a massive overpay for the Niners. I think it kind of works myself. As for the Panthers, I do love this trade for them. Just kind of thinking back coming into the year, I wasn't even sure if Christian McCaffrey was going to be able to stay healthy or be much of an impact for this team. Like, yes, he's a fun playmaker. He's a great player to have in your building and all that. But for a team that's in a rebuild, to have a 26, 27-year-old running back who has been injured, who's making a bunch of money, for a team that's entering a rebuild, there is no purpose in having Christian McCaffrey on that team. So you get half of a draft for him. I love that. It's just a huge win for the Panthers. He's worth so much more to the Niners than he is to the Panthers. So I love that trade for the Panthers. All right, let's talk about Chase Claypool. And this will transition into the Green Bay Packers. But let's start by talking about the Steelers, who have traded Chase Claypool to the Chicago Bears for a second-round pick. And I was hoping that the chat could clarify for me. There's been a lot of back and forth, a little lack of clarity on if this was the Bears' second-round pick or the Ravens' second-round pick that they just got for Roquan Smith. So if the chat could let me know, because that does change a little bit about how I feel about this for the Bears. But overall, I think this makes sense for the Steelers. Like, that's pretty simple. Deontay Johnson, I believe, got paid this offseason. They just drafted George Pickens. You have Pat Freiermuth. You have Najee Harris. You just drafted another deep threat as well, the kid out of Memphis, Calvin Austin. Maybe he can get some reps now. And the chat saying it is the Bears' second-round pick. Thanks, guys. But it does make sense for the Steelers. He's had a hard time producing in that offense. Just hasn't been a great fit lately. So I totally understand it. And that's a really good return. You're getting a potential top 40, top 50 pick from the Chicago Bears for a Steelers team that desperately needs to add offensive linemen and add players into that secondary, which they did as well with a different trade that we'll talk about later for William Jackson. So I love this for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Makes a ton of sense. But to me, this is one of the more win-win trades that we've seen because I love this for the Chicago Bears. Now, chat saying this was their second-round pick. That's not cheap. If that turns into the 40th overall pick, that's a lot for a guy in Chase Claypool who has now in his third year has fallen off from his rookie debut. But I do think when you look at Chase Claypool, a 6'4" player, that when he was playing with the confidence in his rookie season, this is a guy that we were comparing to the likes of Odell Beckham, who came into the league red hot, Juju Smith-Schuster, who was there in Pittsburgh, a rookie receiver that comes into the league and was killing it, mossing dudes, contributing as a deep threat, the physicality after the catch. He is a true mismatch problem, and a piece that the Bears, if they can get that rookie Chase Claypool, that version of rookie Chase Claypool, that's a huge win for them, right? And I look at how things have transpired with the Steelers after Big Ben kind of fell off in 2021, big time, and now a quarterback carousel, a rookie quarterback coming in, a crowded wide receiver room. It's just not a situation that is conducive to a guy like Chase Claypool producing. He is probably a wide receiver 2 type. I think he's, like a faster, less reliable Mike Williams, so to speak, or a T. Higgins type. Ideal as a number 2 guy, but they've got plenty of other options there, and they're not explosive passing games that can support a number 2 receiver to produce and look good. But obviously the NFL, the Chicago Bears, looked at this and said, there's nothing wrong with Chase Claypool. It's what's wrong with the Steelers. So if you're getting that guy, that is definitely worth the 40th overall pick. That is worth a first-round pick if you're getting rookie Chase Claypool, who still has another cheap year of control, which you cannot underrate or overrate in a league where guys like Christian Kirk are making $23 million. The Bears get Chase Claypool for nothing next year. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. So would I rather have them given the Ravens second-round pick? Yeah, sure. But I do like this for the Bears. And in fact, I love it for the Bears. Like I said, I think this is probably the most win-win trade that happened. And, I talked about how I might not be doing a game recap podcast this week. This is a great opportunity to talk about the Bears a little bit because Justin Fields has played really well, really the last 3 weeks. You go to that Vikings game, the Patriots game last week, and now this Cowboys game against the number one defense in the NFL. Made some plays, really made stuff happen, and the fact that he has basically not broken in a situation that could have led to him getting broken and playing with a lack of confidence and developing bad tendencies. This is huge for the Bears because that was the number one goal this year. Yes, this is a rebuild. Yeah, we might not win a ton of games, but let's walk out of this feeling good about our culture and feeling good that we got a franchise quarterback. In the last 3 weeks, you are starting to feel pretty damn good that Justin Fields is turning into that guy, right? The development track, the leadership, the energy, I think it's all been good with Fields. Are there stuff that he needs to work on? Yeah, absolutely. But you know what's going to help him work on that? Fucking Chase Claypool, right? So now that they've gotten a look at him halfway through the year, they can jumpstart the relationship, the chemistry with Chase Claypool as their deep threat so that it's ready to go next year. But beyond that, it's another weapon that can let Fields continue to develop. They were going to have to spend a high pick on a receiver anyway, and they still might spend another one. So you're giving up the 40th pick. Yeah, the rookie contract's a little bit more shallow. You only have one more year, but the Bears have like $110 million in cap space, right? So that doesn't even really matter. As long as this works, you're going to pay him, and it's going to be great. So I think Chase Claypool is a great fit. He's a Midwest guy through and through, and he's going to fit right in there next to Darnell Mooney, and those skill sets totally make sense together. So I love this move for the Bears, and it's just a good point as we're going to start talking about the Packers now. Not every trade is perfect. Not every trade is perfect, but especially when you talk about these playmakers, when this is a literal arm race around the league, yeah, tough shit. You might have to overpay a little bit. The Saints had to give up like an extra, didn't they give up like 6 picks to go get Chris Olave? We're not complaining about that, right? Like, yeah, tough shit. You got to pay up for a wide receiver. The Dolphins had to give up a first and a second round pick and $30 million of cap space. Yeah. Did you watch the NFL last weekend? These receivers are dominating. Get yourself some playmakers, and yeah, you might have to pay up a little bit. Who the hell cares? As long as you're not doing that left and right, if you got to overpay once or twice, it's not the end of the world. All right. That's the transition here to what's going to turn into a rant here that I think you guys are waiting on here. It's time we kind of collect our thoughts and have a really serious conversation here about the Green Bay Packers. And this is all one take. I've got my notes. We're going to see where this goes. But it's a joke what's going on in Green Bay. There's so much to talk about here. They were the laughingstock of Twitter today. Countless jokes about, look at the state of the NFL, where people are acquiring playmakers, acknowledging that the trade deadline is a real way to improve your team, and the Packers acting like it's 1988. Shareholders sitting around, looking at each other. Brian Gutekunst, probably didn't wake up till 4:30 today, just, sleeping with his thumb in his ass. It's a joke. Let's start by talking about the fact that they came in today and they felt good about getting a trade done for Chase Claypool. Yeah, they woke up, they've been talking to the Steelers for 2 weeks. There was a report like October 18th that the Packers were in. Yeah, they felt good. They felt good that they were going to get Chase Claypool. Rodgers goes on the Pat McAfee show, finds out he gets traded to the Bears. He's like, yeah, I thought we were going to be in the mix there. Aaron Rodgers is all of us. Just like, oh, shoot, there's another almost Green Bay Packer. Just put him in the Hall of Fame for the 20 All-Pro receivers that were almost Green Bay Packers. And, you look around Twitter, and it's really good to see other accounts that are not Packers accounts, like kind of going after the Packers finally and acknowledging that what the hell is going on here? Well, how is this happening? We knew 3 years ago that this team needed receivers, and here we are. The team's depleted with injuries. You re-signed Aaron Rodgers at 39 years old. Everybody's screaming from the rooftop like, yeah, it's a no-brainer to go get a wide receiver. We can all see it. You got Robert Griffin talking about it, Dan Orlovsky talking about it. It is good to see other accounts that are not just Packers accounts kind of finally acknowledging this and calling out the bullshit. I tweeted 2 weeks ago with this Chase Claypool situation when they were talking to the Steelers that he would make a great addition to the Packers almost wide receiver Hall of Fame. It's just sad how predictable this whole thing was. You get the tweet from, I think it was Tom Pelissero, maybe. No, it was Josina Anderson. Said that, the Packers were in the mix. They felt good, but they got outbid. And that's such a huge issue here, is they don't value the position and they can't close these deals. The amount of receivers that we tried, guys. We were in the mix. We thought about it. Oh, sorry. It's going to be Samori Toure the rest of the year. 7th round pick. Have fun. Good luck, Rodgers. Everything's fine. It's just bullshit. You got Allen Robinson in 2019. Couldn't close the deal. 2020. We really liked Brandon Ayuk. We really liked Justin Jefferson. We thought about trading up. We tried. Guys. We really did. Sorry. 2021. We called Odell Beckham once. We called him. We said, oh, yeah, you can be our wide receiver 4. We might want you. You know what Sean McVay did? Had him out. Took him to dinner. Took out the playbook and said, you're going to be this in our offense. We can't wait to have you. And he's like, oh, the Rams actually want me? Oh, they're actually willing to give me more than a league minimum contract? Yeah, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go to the team that actually wants me. Let alone all of the wide receivers that the Packers could have drafted over the last 3 years. There was a tweet from Mike Renner like a year ago, just going through all the guys that the Packers passed on. Taking the likes of A.J. Dillon, Josiah DeGuara, guys like DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Chase Claypool, who they liked. We liked him. We just didn't think he was worth a 2nd round pick. Get fucked, Brian Gutekunst. What are you doing here? Wake up. This is not 1988. You need receivers. So the amount of receivers that they almost had is an embarrassment. And you might be able to look at each individual one and say, come up with a list of reasons of why it didn't make sense. But at some point, you got to put your fucking nuts on the table and make something happen, like everybody else in the league is doing. And that comes back to Brian Gutekunst. That is negotiations. That is an effort to make something happen. And it's just not being a fucking pussy. So you can't sit around for 5 years and wait on the perfect trade. They woke up this morning, had a deal on the table. We felt pretty good. Chase Claypool was going to be ours. Oh, the Bears came in and paid a little bit more than we were willing to go. Oh, all right, Samori Toure season. Here we go. Let's roll out the 7th round pick out of Nebraska. Can't wait. It's going to be super fun. So it's not only the lack of ability to finish these deals and get into the bidding wars in these free agency conversations, talk to these GMs, figure out what it's going to cost before another team comes in and does it before you. It's not just the lack of execution as a GM. They undervalue the position group as a whole, right? That couldn't be any more clear. Whether it's the draft or free agency or how much they want to pay these guys. And they deserve a ton of criticism for letting Davante Adams and Marquez Valdes-Scantling out of the building. Davante Adams, if you go back maybe a full year ago, if they just came to the table and there was stories like, oh, Davante Adams wants $27 million a year, right? Davante and his agent, they had the foresight to look at this and say, this is where the receiver market's going. We are the best receiver in the NFL. Let's ask for this much money. And the Packers were like, well, we think you're about, $25 million. 27's a little bit rich for Davante Adams. So they go through the whole year. And you know what happens? Davante Adams crushes the entire league and basically tells them to get lost because they never believed in Davante to reset the receiver market and all this stuff. They lacked the foresight to do that. And the second Davante Adams says, trade me, Brian Gutekunst goes, okay, bye, receiver. You scare me anyway. You smell bad. You're a wide receiver. Look at the Niners. Deebo Samuel does the same thing. They didn't think Deebo was really worth it, but Deebo balled out. He says, I'm unhappy. I want to be paid. Trade me. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch sit down with him and say, all right, can we relax for a second? We're not going to trade you right away. Just come back to the building. Come back to OTAs. Let's work this out. Let's just please relax. We'll pay you. Everything's fine, dude. Like, come on, let's figure this out. We don't have to trade you immediately. And they got it done. Because they understand the value of the position. They understand what they had. And that just giving that away is not a smart thing to do. So they completely botched the Davante Adams situation. Completely botched it. But even after that, they had an opportunity to maybe get MVS back. Get somebody back that Aaron Rodgers, who is notorious for having his guys, for struggling to develop chemistry with really young receivers, for all of the things Rodgers is great at, he does have a flaw. He really struggles to trust young wide receivers. You might want to look at this and say, let's keep one of these guys. Okay, we botched the Davante Adams situation. Let's maybe pay up for Marquez Valdes-Scantling. MVS wanted to be back. Loved Green Bay, loved Packers fans. But the Chiefs, who traded their wide receiver away and said, oh shit, we need to replace that. Because it's wide receiver in the NFL in 2022. You can't roll in with what the Packers are working with right now. They said, all right, shit, we're going to have to pay up a little bit for MVS, a guy that's had drop issues, but his tape was really good last year. He was injured. We're going to believe in MVS. They give him 3 years, $30 million. Some of it's fake money, but the Packers looked at it and said, no, we can take a 24-year-old out of North Dakota State. He'll do what MVS can do. Nope, let MVS go. We don't value that. We'll figure it out. It's asinine. It is unbelievable that Brian Gutekunst and the leadership there, and I don't think the coaching staff is free of blame for not valuing wide receivers. I really don't. But can we get some adults in the building in Green Bay, please? These guys have no idea what they're doing. And it's not just the wide receiver thing. Gutekunst, the last 3 off seasons have been an embarrassment for him. It should be a unanimous agreement that he is not an NFL GM. So he comes in 2019, did a really good job. Active in free agency, drafted really well, brings in Rashawn Gary and Elton Jenkins. No doubt, he started well. And he fucking fooled us all, dude. Fooled us all. Because 2020 through 2022, The only good free agency things they did, they got lucky with Campbell, the linebacker, he has regressed all the way back to that street free agent that they picked up literally off the street after they paid him $50 million. So he has regressed all the way back. And Rasul Douglas, which was a good pickup. Those are the only good free agent moves that they have made. And those were street free agents, dart throws, guys that came in basically on the practice squad and earned their way up. Beyond those two moves, no trades other than Rodgers forcing them to go get Randall Cobb. No trades and no free agent signings other than, who was it? Devin Funchess was the one big wide receiver signing a couple years ago. That was great. That was really fun. Who else have they signed? They didn't sign anyone in the secondary. They brought in, you know who they brought in? Jaron Reed, who's taken snaps from their first round pick. Devontae Wyatt, Reed's killing it, taking all those reps from your first round pick. Great free agent signing, Brian. Yeah, love it. Oh, man. So free agency trades, non-factor. Let's talk about his drafts. 2020, he takes Jordan Love. And I'll admit it, I like the Jordan Love pick. I did. I still believe in Jordan Love. I think that single individual pick was actually just fine. I think it lit a fire under Rodgers' ass. Rodgers was not playing well before that. One pick, or I guess a first and a fourth against the potential future of your franchise. I still don't think that individual pick was that bad. But when you compound that with all of the ensuing decisions, that's when it becomes horrible. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But so he takes Jordan Love. Second round, A.J. Dillon. And like I said on draft night, I like A.J. Dillon. I said he could be baby Derrick Henry and be a really good back. But he follows that up by extending Aaron Jones, who's a fucking $20 million cap hit next year. So you spent a second-round pick in a draft where you could have had the likes of Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, real wide receiver impacts, Devin Duvernay, guys that I was crying for here on this channel on draft night. Crying for them. He drafts a power back who's a backup right now, who they need to take off the field because Aaron Jones is the only guy that can do anything offensively. But to compound that by re-signing Aaron Jones, basically rendering A.J. Dillon useless, really bad decision. And it's not A.J. Dillon's fault. He's a good back. Not having the best year this year, but the overinvestment in running back there, super stupid. Third round pick, Josiah frickin' DeGuara. Biggest thing he's done was drop a third down pass against the Niners in the playoffs last year. Killed a drive that might have ended up leading to them win that game. Nothing else from that draft class. 2021. Couple of decent picks, right? Eric Stokes, good rookie year. Year two, though, gets benched last week, having a down year. Not a horrible pick. There's way worse first-round picks. But you know who I was screaming for and I think I give the Stokes pick like a C-. I said Asante Samuel and Stokes' teammate Tyson Campbell, who's like the number one rated corner per PFF right now. So those are better players. Should have taken them instead of Eric Stokes. Just better players. I thought Stokes was more of a top 50 kind of guy, and they had real first-round talent sitting there that they did not take. And it was even worse when they took Josh Myers in the second round, the pick before Creed Humphrey, who might be the best center in the NFL in year two, who was an obvious pick. So decent picks, but could have been a hell of a lot better. And then nothing else after that. Nothing else. Amari Rodgers in the third round, Royce Newman in the fourth round, whereas I said take Trey Smith, who the Chiefs also took. They take Royce Newman in the fourth round, who has now been benched and has cost the Packers games in 2022. And then you get to this most recent draft. And hell, I liked some of their day three picks, right? I liked Zach Tom a lot. I liked the Sean Ryan pick. I thought Romeo Doubs was a good process in the fourth round. Those were nice little picks. But to spend a first-round pick on a raw developmental linebacker that I had a third-round grade on, Quay Walker, who has been either unnoticeable or a liability for the defense, an inconsistent season, but has made no difference to a team who probably would have been better off just sticking with Chris Barnes, who was pretty good as an undrafted pickup, or, doing any of the number of things that I talked about, waiting till the second round. I didn't see a huge difference between a Quay Walker and a Chad Muma and a Leo Chanel. Why rush to the table to take the first linebacker off the board when that position group has had no semblance of success with these raw development players at the position group? Why rush to the table to take the first guy off the board when you can wait to the second round, where they had, at the time, 2 second-round picks to make that happen? They rushed to the table when everybody knows they needed a wide receiver. Within the 10 picks before that, you have the Lions trading up for Jamison Williams. The Saints moved up for Chris Olave. The Eagles got A.J. Brown. The Cardinals got Marquise Brown, who looked great before injury. Another player they could have had in 2019 instead of some of the other picks they made. So many issues with the Quay Walker pick. Devontae Wyatt was fine, but again, where's the communication with the staff? Like, if he's not going to play, why are you spending a first-round pick on Devontae Wyatt? They signed Jerron Reed. They don't release Dean Lowry, who's been bad. I still think Devontae Wyatt can be a good player and be the best out of this group, but there was no plan in place for you to be spending a first-round pick on a 24-year-old defensive tackle out of a championship team to be a part of your defense. He has been nowhere to be seen just because of the snap counts. And then, because they systematically ignore the wide receiver position, they realize, oh, fuck, we need a wide receiver. Forgot. Oh, all right. Let's take our 2 second-round picks and way overpay for the guy that fits our mold, right? We need a guy who's at least 6'3". He's got to be fast, and he's got to run block. Did he produce? I don't care. Can he run routes? I don't care. Can he catch? I don't care. His RAS score, though, ooh, that RAS score, man. Look at that. Christian Watson, let's get him in here. Wide receiver 1. We're good. We can wait till the 4th round now. Romeo Dubs will be a good insurance plan. Fuck that. These guys have got to go. Brian Gutekunst, and it's not just him. It's not just him. This is an organizational philosophy that is a huge problem here. But I'm not done ripping on Brian Gutekunst. This is a circus act. Because what was the point of re-signing Aaron Rodgers if you're going to get here to the trade deadline? If you're going to go through you're going to re-sign Rodgers, right? And then your next moves are trading Devontae Adams and basically entering rebuild mode. You're going to rebuild with a 39-year-old quarterback that they could have gotten a fucking king's ransom for coming off of back-to-back MVPs after you have a first-round quarterback that you drafted 3 years ago? If you're going to act like this, why did you not trade Aaron Rodgers? You could have gotten all of that from Denver. You could have gotten the Russell Wilson package. 2 firsts, 2 seconds, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris. Look at the team there. Look at that game against the Bills. They're treating Aaron Rodgers like Marcus Mariota because they can't pass. So, if you're going to act like this, why did you re-sign Aaron Rodgers? At least have the fucking balls to double down on your guy, Jordan Love. At least don't be a pussy and back into that. Because he has no idea what he wants to do. There's no plan here. There's no cohesiveness. It's a circus act. And it's embarrassing for a supposedly legendary, historic organization to be genuinely one of the most frustrating, confusingly run teams in the league. If you asked around the league, who are the 3 worst run teams in the league, I think you would get the Arizona Cardinals, maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars, but they just made a damn good trade here for Calvin Ridley today that I love. And the Green Bay Packers. Now, Gutekunst has got to go. I've laid that out. I think that's very clear at this point. If you listen to my points there and you still think he is someone worthy of running an NFL team, being a general manager, I don't know what to tell you. But there is more change that needs to happen. I have talked about the Packers being overly conservative for a long time. Really, when I started this channel in like 2016, I was saying, the Packers, they don't make aggressive changes with their staff. They're way too conservative with these guys. They don't participate in free agency. They don't make trades. They don't get aggressive in the draft. That's been an issue for years, going back to Brett Favre, right? And that's the organizational philosophy. It's, we're in Green Bay. We can't attract free agents. We aren't going to be aggressive. We're going to think about the sustainability of the organization. Well, times are changing, right? Look at the last few Super Bowl champs. Just look at the trade deadline today. That wasn't the NFL 4 years ago. That wasn't the NFL last year. Teams are making moves, man. And if you are the Green Bay Packers and you want to ride that fine line and you just want to be solid every year, well, guess what? Every single year, somebody is going to prioritize that year above the long-term sustainability. And you're going to just constantly getting passed up by these teams that want a ring. And there has been no philosophical adjustments to the way the NFL is now. And that goes beyond Brian Gutekunst. That goes up to Murphy, the president of the team, and it goes beyond that to a thing that I don't know if it can be fixed. There's no owner. The Green Bay Packers have no owner. I mean, I wish that this could do something here, Packers fans, but it can't. I love this. I hang it on my wall. It's why I'm so pissed right now. But there's nobody to step in and say, oh, Joe Barry, the defensive coordinator that was on the 0-16 Lions, is mishandling this defense? Get lost, dude. See ya. We'll bring in somebody else that can give a damn and figure out how to make this defense great that we're spending every draft pick and every ounce of free agency that we have. But no, there's nobody to step in. LaFleur isn't growing a pair of balls. Gutekunst isn't growing a pair of balls. And Mark Murphy sure as hell isn't. So I don't know how that gets better. There's a clip I want to play here of Mike McCarthy in, I don't even know what year this was. Probably like 2015. Someone asked him, what's the trade deadline like in Green Bay? And when you put it in the context of what we just saw today, where everybody's making moves, two teams in their own fucking division spent high draft picks to go get receivers, playmakers, TJ Hawkinson, Chase Claypool. Put this clip in the context of how Brian Gutekunst acted today in 2022 in the NFL.
What's the trade deadline like around here on yesterday? What's the trade deadline like around here? Is it a lot of conversation or just standard?
Is that what you asked? I thought it was next week. No? Yeah, that's what it's like. So.
Everybody laughs.
What's the trade deadline?
Like it's okay. It's pathetic. There's no other word to describe that other than pathetic. That was 5 years ago saying, oh, the trade deadline? We act like we don't even know when it is because we don't make trades. We're the Green Bay Packers. We're better than everybody else. We don't need to make trades. Our team's perfect. And Brian Gutekunst, probably 5 years later, doing the same shit. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I think that speaks for itself. So, it's infuriating. It's sad. I don't know what you do. I mean, I know you fire Brian Gutekunst. He's not fit for the job. I know you fire Joe Barry. But I don't know how you fix the conservative nature of this organization that just isn't getting with the times. The Rams have built a model, and the Bucs before them, there is a new model in the NFL. You try to win a Super Bowl, and if you got to take a step back, if you got to be the Rams here this year, who would you rather be right now? Both the Rams and the Packers are really struggling. Would you rather be the Rams who cared enough to try to win a Super Bowl? And yeah, they're having a down year. You know who doesn't care? The Rams. Yeah, they're competing. Maybe they'll get in the mix. Maybe they'll make things interesting. But they got a ring, right? What's the Bill Simmons rule? You win a championship, it buys you 5 years. The Packers just don't give a shit about a Super Bowl. And they've had the best run of quarterback play since Joe Montana and Steve Young, and they got 2 to show for it. 2 in 30 years with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. And it's because of this shit. It might have worked. Might have worked in 1960. It's 2022. The league is changing. We saw more trade deadline moves today than maybe the last 3 years combined. I'm done. It's exhausting, and I'm glad I got this out, but it's just a circus act in Green Bay. And if this didn't convince you, I don't know what will, but I'm convicted in that this is one of the 3 worst organizations in the league, which is pathetic given their legacy and the quarterbacks that they've had in charge here. And it's not just now. This is a reflection of years and years of mismanagement in Green Bay. And they're just making the same mistakes. All right, let's move on. Next trade we're going to talk about is Bradley Chubb, the Denver Broncos making a move for a first-round pick in Chase Edmonds from the Miami Dolphins. I love this move for the Denver Broncos. And we'll talk about this from the Dolphins' perspective too. But if we're going on a love it, like it, not sure, don't get it scale, this is top end, love it. Probably my favorite move that any one team made here at the deadline. A lot of things to like about this. Number one is just they don't have a first round pick, right? They gave all this draft capital for Russell Wilson, and they have some needs, right? Like there's just different spots on their roster. We don't need to get into that. But having a first round pick for a team that they ain't win a Super Bowl this year. Denver might rally and sneak into the playoffs, but they ain't win a Super Bowl this year. They are in on this Russell Wilson window. They got to figure this thing out to get a Super Bowl out of Russ because they understand that is the expectations here. So you get a significant draft pick back. You get the Niners first round pick. You'll be back in the first round. They also get Chase Edmonds, which is a sneaky good part of this trade. You know, Edmonds is a solid back. They've really struggled with getting explosiveness out of that run game. I think that's something that's going to help this offense. I don't think he's going to be a full-time starter, but with an outside zone system like this, I think Chase Edmonds can have some success. And Denver's going to really need a good run game if they're going to be serious this year. So you get Chase Edmonds, who can provide some explosiveness, open up the offense a little bit, and you get a first-round pick. And I don't think they're that much worse as a team either because you're hoping to get Randy Gregory back soon. They have found a complete diamond in the rough in Baron Browning, who looks like baby Von Miller out there. We've talked about him on the Fully Inflated Football podcast a couple times this year. Again, guys, make sure you check it out. If you're here in the chat and you enjoy my analysis, make sure you are following the Fully Inflated Football podcast. But we've talked about how he was at Ohio State and was basically misused, a super incredible athlete, 5-star kind of guy, I can only imagine, but was used as an off-ball linebacker. The Broncos draft him, year one, he plays off-ball, looks okay, but they move him to edge. And this dude times the snap, he bends around the corner, he's putting on spin moves, like, he looks legit. So you got Randy Gregory, you got Baron Browning, and they spent a second-round pick on another really juiced-up guy, Nick Bonito. So I think they can pretty much sustain the pass rush. Chubb's been pretty good this year, no doubt. But I don't think it really changes them too much this year. If anything, it might make them better if Chase Edmonds can really be good there. But to get a first-round pick is huge for Denver, because they do need a little bit more youth there on that team. So I love that for Denver. As for Miami, I actually put this in the don't get it conversation. I wouldn't have made this move myself if I'm Miami. They don't have their first round pick. They have this pick. So now they won't be picking in the first round, obviously. I don't entirely hate it. Someone was showing me some stats on Twitter that the Dolphins have been a little bit worse rushing the passer than I think I thought in my mind, just kind of my emotional reaction. I still think they have some pieces, right? You got Wilkins, you got Ogba, you've got Melvin Ingram, Jalen Phillips has been showing up a little bit lately. Like, I don't think about the Dolphins and say their front is bad. Now, clearly it hasn't been great. They'll come in and hopefully help the pass rush and maybe can help this defense become a great defense, which they definitely have the potential to be. But you're going to have to pay them after giving a first-round pick up. It's just a lot for a pass rusher that I think is a really good number 2. I don't think Bradley Chubb is a guy that's going to come in and evolve this pass rush. I think it is an upgrade to the pass rush. I understand that they felt like they needed one more piece there, and I get that, but this is a lot to pay, a first-round pick. And I think the Dolphins can win a Super Bowl, but when I think of how that was going to play out, if they were going to win a Super Bowl, I don't think the pass rush was really going to change that, right? Like, I think if the Dolphins are going to win a Super Bowl, they're going to need luck from other teams. They're going to need to, like, basically have the Bills and the Chiefs either shoot themselves in the foot against you or like avoid them somehow, like other teams beat them. And if you don't have to go through the Bills or the Chiefs at their best, like, they can probably get through the AFC. The NFC sucks. Like, I can still see the Dolphins winning a Super Bowl, but I just don't think this move changes that too much. I think it still comes down to the defensive backs getting healthy, the defense executing, and Tua continuing to play well, which we're not doing the game recap this week, but my God, Tua was fucking awesome this week, you guys. Like, Tua was so sharp, so good. If that's Tua every week, I can buy into that. It was against the Lions, but man, he was good. But I just don't think Bradley Chubb really changes the outlook of their team's season. So I just don't love the trade. I don't really get it. It's not like the end of the world. But I would not have made that trade myself personally. I would rather have that first round pick to continue improving the offensive line, maybe get a younger pass rusher in there in the draft. Byron Jones, Xavier Howard not getting any younger there, maybe a new corner. Like, I just don't really look at this and like that was the move that now makes them really good shot, like gives them a really good shot at the Super Bowl. I don't love it. They also snagged Jeff Wilson from the Niners for a 5th round pick. I like that. You're just recreating the Niners backfield there with Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Why not? Although it's another pick that they're giving up for a running back, I guess it's not a crazy pick, but worth noting. We got a couple more trades here, and then we're going to wrap up. So William Jackson goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I didn't see the compensation. I can't imagine it's much. Probably like a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick is what I would imagine there. For Washington, you were going to cut the guy anyway. And we've talked a lot about William Jackson really struggling with this zone-heavy system, just kind of poor pro scouting on Washington and Ron Rivera's end to feel like they could kind of coach him up how to play zone. He's been a man corner. He's been at his best on man-heavy teams. And he's just really struggled in a quarters-heavy split safety defense there. And I think it's really led to a lack of confidence, and he's been a kind of a liability for Washington. So I get, they were going to cut him if they couldn't get a deal done, and the Steelers go and pluck him. And you know who runs a pretty man-heavy system, or at least a zone match-heavy system? The Steelers. So they desperately needed corner help. And I think this is more about the future. You know, the Steelers are going to keep competing. The Steelers are never going to give up on a team. They hope that Watt can get back and maybe this defense can scrap out a winning season somehow. But this was going to be a need for the Steelers, right? Is cornerback. This room is really rough. It's like a motley crew of failed players on other teams and mid-round picks, and it's just not a good secondary with those corners. And William Jackson has a potential at, what is he, probably 29, 30 years old here? Let's look. He just turned 30, like 4 days ago. So you could get a couple years out of William Jackson and find yourself a good starter there in that system. I think it's a good move for Pittsburgh, who just needs more talent there. And I think it's a good scheme fit. So that made sense. And then Calvin Ridley showing back up in the headlines. Remember, Calvin Ridley suspended this year, receiver for the Falcons, suspended for gambling on games. The Jacksonville Jaguars giving up one of the most wild trade packages you'll ever see. It's a pick that could be anywhere from a 6th to a 4th to a 5th to a 2nd round pick, depending on how it turns out. I think it's like if he doesn't play at all, he's a 6th round pick. If he does play, he's a 5th round pick. And then like if he reaches a long-term extension with the Jags, he's a 2nd round pick, which is probably what happens, I would guess. There's nothing wrong with Ridley on the field. He's a good kind of low-end number 1 type, high-end number 2. But what he gives the Jags is exactly what we've said pretty much every week on the Fully Inflated Football podcast this year. He gives them that perimeter threat. I've had in my notes, like every week, Jags outside wide receiver, like mock draft season, lock it in. I was prepared to basically have a perimeter wide receiver for the Jags every single time because it's just everything the Jags do has been over the middle. They can't get the ball outside the numbers. And Calvin Ridley is one of the best outside the numbers receivers in the league. So excellent, excellent draft pick for the Jags, who have kind of done some nice stuff, right? As a front office. Trent Baalke gets a lot of crap, but I don't look at their offseason and it's like a disaster. They do have to overpay for some guys, but the trade market is a great way to get guys in before you have to overpay for guys in free agency. So I love this move for the Jags. Their season's cooked, so to get a guy who's can't come back till next year is no problem. For the Falcons, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I understand the idea that, well, you know, they've drafted Drake London and they've got Kyle Pitts and, you know, the gambling situation. They just felt like it was time for a change of scenery. It's not the end of the world to get a 2nd round pick for Ridley, who is a little bit older. I think he's already like 28, 29. In football years, he's a lot younger than that because he was strangely like a 23-year-old true junior coming out. But I don't know. I don't love it. You guys know I wasn't crazy about the Drake London pick because I felt like they kind of need a little more speed and separation with those receivers. I felt like he was a little bit redundant with Kyle Pitts, and we've certainly seen they've struggled to have those guys coexist, which was a big reason why I was skeptical about the fit with Drake London there. I thought maybe a Garrett Wilson would have made more sense if you're going to eventually get rid of Calvin Ridley. So I would rather have Calvin Ridley on the Falcons for sure than a 2nd round pick. Like, I think he is worth about that, especially for a Falcons team that I think does still need verticality at wide receiver. So I don't love it for the Falcons, but I also understand maybe as an organization, like just wanting to move on from that. So I guess I get it. And then the last one is something that just came in when I went live. Chat, what was the compensation for Nahim Hines? Let's see if I can find that real quick, because I'm curious how much the Colts got for him and how much the Bills gave up for him. Anyone know in the chat? Zach Mawson, an 8th round pick. It's interesting because they drafted Cook in the second round. It was Moss in a sixth. I mean, why would the Colts do that? That doesn't make sense to me. Colts are getting weird, man. Colts are becoming harder and harder to justify. Like, I just don't get that. You're benching Matt Ryan, a sixth round pick, and Zach. What does Zach Moss do for you? Nothing. You have Deion Jackson looks great. Why are you going after Zach Moss? Nahim Hines is explosive and young, great locker room guy. I think that's a pretty bad trade for the Colts. They were just struggling to use him. As for the Bills, I mean, I like it. I guess I'll ring my own bell a little bit on James Cook. James Cook hasn't really grasped that role. I said, I like James Cook as like a third, fourth round guy. I liked how he fit in that offense, a team that does hit a lot of checkdowns. He provided that explosive element, but I did say, like, if you're spending a second round pick, he's got to make that impact right away. And clearly he has not. But if you can get Nahim Hines for a sixth round pick and a bad running back, like, yeah, absolutely make that move. So I do like that for the Bills. And it's just, an embarrassment of riches for the Bills, who are trying to win a Super Bowl this year, right? A smart front office. It's a bit of a theme here, saying, hey, let's make this our year. Let's get her done. Let's get a freaking Super Bowl on our fingers, a ring on our fingers. So I love that move for the Bills. If that's all they had to give up, that's pretty crazy. So that is really all we got. Now, I did say I would answer any super chats that we got here at the end of the show. So I want to scroll back, and I'm sorry if I missed you guys earlier. The earliest one I see is from Broshmo. What's up? What's up, Broshmo? Hope all is well with the channel there. Appreciate the super chat. He just says, is Miami paying too much for Chubb? And we definitely covered that, but appreciate the super chat, Broshmo. We got Spencer just coming in with a little bit of support from Canada for the channel. I appreciate you, Spencer. Super chat from Dinesh. What's the Packers fan perspective on the TJ Hawkinson trade? I think the Claypool thing is more frustrating than Hawkinson. Like, I don't think the Packers should have been in the mix to give up a second and a third round pick for TJ Hawkinson. That one is what it is. It's more of the philosophy difference that is frustrating. I look at the Packers receiving group, and that's really where they need help. But I don't think Hawkinson solves a whole lot for Green Bay. I think a guy like Chase Claypool might, or Brandon Cooks might. Another one from Josh. Appreciate the super chat, my dude, and the support. And then Tanner asks thoughts on Quinn to the Eagles. Yeah, I left Quinn out for this one just because it was last week, and a bit of a more minor trade. Quinn, a fourth round pick to the Eagles, another team that's going for it this year, a team that has historically really valued depth and rotation for that defensive line. I don't have any issue with it for either side. I don't think it's some amazing value for the Bears. I mean, fourth round's not bad for a guy that wasn't even giving them that much this year. Opens up some cap space, although I think they ate a lot of the contract. But it's another pick for the Bears. So I don't, Robert Quinn really hasn't done a whole lot this year. He is up there in age. He's been a very streaky player. But you can definitely picture for the Eagles, come playoff time, you can picture a world where he gets you a big third down sack on Dak Prescott or Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl or something, right? He's one of those players that if he can get 10 healthy snaps of full speed as opposed to the Bears where he's playing more full time, maybe he can be a more efficient rusher. So I tweeted about it when it happened. I said, Howie Roseman is better than your GM, and I still believe that. I mean, it definitely was a just fine trade for the Eagles. They've made countless other better, bigger moves than that, but it's a why not good move for the Eagles that might make a difference for them in a year where the NFC is a joke. Luke says, thoughts on the Panthers not trading Burns to the Rams for 2 firsts. You're on the fence of whether or not they should have done it. I would not have accepted that one, Luke. The Rams wouldn't be able to give you a first-round pick this year. It would have been 2024 and 2025. a team with that coaching, with Stafford, you expect them to still be probably a playoff team, or at least in the mix. Best case, you're looking at, a fringe playoff team giving you the 16th pick both years. It's one thing if you're the Eagles to get like the Saints first round pick who don't have a quarterback and maybe it turns into a top 10 pick. It's another thing like you're getting a future pick from the Rams. You expect that to still be a pretty competent organization. So I would have said no because it just creates a new problem for your team. Brian Burns is 24. You, in theory, should be able to clear up your cap space pretty quickly and find out a way to pay him. So I think that's a long way to wait for a draft pick. If you got 2 firsts from them or from anybody like now and next year, I think you think a lot harder about it. I think that's like right on the line of whether or not I would take that for Brian Burns. But to get 2 future firsts, I decline that. I know there's a lot of people saying I can't believe the Panthers didn't accept that, but star pass rushers like Brian Burns don't just grow on trees, and you're probably going to have to use one of those first round picks on a pass rusher anyway. So it's tough. I would not have taken that offer from the Rams. Tanner also asked, should Pete Carmichael be a head coach next year? The Saints OC. He could be in the mix. I mean, he's been there behind Sean Payton for a long time. I think he's doing a really good job this year. I think he's a really good offensive mind. So I'm all for people hiring good offensive minds as head coaches. I don't know if his resume is quite there yet that teams will consider that, but if he got hired, I don't think I would have any issues with that. Adam, thank you for the super chat. You appreciated the Packers rant. Hey, I'm glad I got that out of my system. I'm really glad. And then Ezo Games says, why is OBJ waiting to sign? Odell Beckham, of course, there. It's hard to know for sure. I'm sure he's focusing on his rehab, trying to get that knee back healthy. And I do think Odell is balancing right now. Like, number one, I think he's just enjoying the spotlight. He enjoys everybody tweeting about him every day. He enjoys the allure of where he's going to sign. I think he feels like he can have an impact on what happens this year in the NFL. I think there's a little bit of that. I think he's also maybe waiting to see if the Rams can get their life together, because I think his heart of hearts, he wants to just go back to the Rams. He's a great chemistry with Stafford. And if they can be if they look like a playoff team in December, I think he'll just go back to the Rams. I really think he likes LA and that team fits him well. So that could be a factor. But I also think he's balancing, he got a Super Bowl ring last year. So I think he's balancing the fact that, hey, he is, 29? He turns 30 in 4 days. So I think he's also balancing, like, that's right at the fringe where he can still get another long-term contract, right? So I think he's also balancing, like, he wants to find the right spot where he has a chance to win. He clearly values that, but somewhere that he can produce and either get an extension with that team or somewhere else. So that's where I think, like, the Vikings might make some sense. I think the Vikings could, although Hawkinson's contract is going to complicate some things. But, like, look at the Bills and the Chiefs. If he goes there, he's not going to really produce a whole lot, I don't think. They kind of have their setup. I don't think they're going to really want to shake things up too much for Odell Beckham at 30 years old with all the explosive players they have. So, like, I'm sure he wants to go play for the Bills, but they're not going to, like, his best usage would be in Gabe Davis's role. And why would the Bills bench Gabe Davis, who's an ascending young star receiver, for Odell at 30 years old, knowing they're probably not going to extend him, right? So, like, that is definitely, like, yeah, he would have a little role there, play some slot, be another outside threat. Like, yeah, he would have a role there, but is that going to give him another $45 million? Like, I think that matters to anybody, but I'm sure Odell cares about that. So he's balancing a lot of stuff. He can't play right now anyway, so not in a huge rush to sign, but at some point he's going to have to pick a team and start to get to know the playbook, right? So, yeah, that's my best take on that situation. Tristan asks, if Seattle doesn't extend Geno, do you think another team will sign him as a starter? Yes. 100% yes. It's well past that point, actually. Like, I could see a lot of things playing out. I do think they will want him back, either on the franchise tag, and I'm glad you brought this up because this was something I wanted to talk about with the Seahawks game preview, which, again, I'm not going to be doing game reviews, rather. I'm not going to be doing game reviews this week. I got to shift my focus to studs and duds after this stream. This is going to get uploaded as a podcast, so we have gotten a chance to talk about some of these teams, but I did have it charted out to talk about Geno for a while. So I'm glad you got this question in there, Tristan. He's well past that point of, do the Seahawks want him back? I think that's a no-brainer at this point because his tape has been incredible. Now, if he falls off of how he's played through the first half of the year, it might change this. So it's an ongoing situation. But if he plays even close to this level the rest of the year, they're going to find a way to keep him. And I think the two outcomes there were our franchise tag, where Geno is basically going to have to bet on himself, sign the tag. He gets paid like $40 million, which that ain't too bad for Geno. But it's only a one-year deal for Seattle, where he's got to show that he can repeat that level of play, which I think he could for an even better Seahawks team next year. That's an option, but the other option would be like a 2 or a 3 year deal where they give him like 30 a year. They kind of lowball him a little bit, where it's like, yeah, there's risk there, but there's huge reward. Like if they gave Geno 3 years, $96 million, and he keeps playing like this, you're getting a borderline top 10 quarterback. I mean, if he's playing like this, you're getting a top 5 quarterback because he's been incredible. And I have talked about this a lot, but if you get him for another 2 years at 3 years at 30-something million, like that is huge for that team from a rebuilding perspective. So I think those are the two most likely outcomes. But if for some reason they don't believe in him, you tag him and you trade him, and I think he's worth at least a second-round pick. But I don't think Seattle wants to go that route. Tanner asked, biggest issues with Vegas this year. It's a lot of everything. I mean, look, they had two defensive pressures this week against the Saints. They're not good enough on the back end to survive when Chandler Jones giving them nothing. And Max Crosby got kind of taken out of the game this week. Their defense is not good. And then Derek Carr is not good. He is having a bad year. They really believed in him. They gave him the extension. Devontae Adams leaves Green Bay to go there, and he is not living up to the billing there. That's a big issue. And I don't think they're particularly well coached either. There's something to that. I don't think Josh McDaniels is doing a great job from a play calling perspective or just from a locker room perspective. So there's a lot of stuff going on with Vegas. It's a disaster. Why did Dallas not go after Brandon Cooks? I think it's the same reason most teams, for all the shit we said about Green Bay, I do think they could have made it happen if they offered a lot, like a second-round pick and something else. But Cooks has a massive contract right now. And if you're going to get him, most of these teams like Dallas, Green Bay, you are going to have to probably pay up a lot for a guy that is getting up there in age, that has had he's one concussion away from maybe having to retire. It's a tough reality, but he's had a lot of concussions in his day. And there was a question a couple years ago on if he was ever going to play again. Still a great player, and I probably would have done it if I was Green Bay, but I wouldn't have done that if I was Dallas. I think they're a little bit better off at wide receiver, but yeah, I mean, you would have had to give up a lot. You would have had to convince the Texans to take on his contract if you're Dallas, because they're not swimming in cap space. A couple more super chats. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for watching today. I'm glad we did this. Venom, thank you for the super chat. Says, who do I root for? I root for smart football teams. Grew up a Packers fan, but I like the teams that make good decisions. This year, it's like Bills. Call it a bandwagon if you want, but as someone that just spends so much time researching and learning about team development and team growth, I like the teams that make smart decisions and find success because of it. I find that fun. So it changes year to year. Thank you for another super chat from Easel Games. And then Mr. Perez, I would have given a second, third, and fifth next year for DJ Moore. I mean, shit, I would have given 2 first-round picks for DJ Moore with the value of receivers. And you can probably convince the Panthers to eat a little bit of that salary for you, which would be huge. I mean, DJ Moore is awesome. But I don't think the Panthers wanted to trade DJ Moore, and I think they're right for that. Thank you, Andres, for the super chat. And then Tanner, why are your 2 quarterbacks struggling so much? Well, a lot of quarterbacks are struggling in general this year, and I don't have an answer for you on this show, but that's a part of it. Beyond that, maybe these guys were just a little bit overrated. Maybe myself, a lot of people didn't look far enough into the ease of Zach Wilson's play at BYU, had a lot of clean pockets. Maybe Trevor Lawrence was a little bit overhyped from the beginning. Mac Jones, the situation around him hasn't been as good. He's a bit of a system guy. I don't know. Trey Lance obviously not out there, but there is no doubt that the 2021 QB class has been a disappointment this year. Justin Fields is the only guy trending up right now. Alex says Coleman's making a Packers video, so that they should go on a winning streak. You know, I should have used that as my logic in the power rankings this week, is that Brett Coleman's making a video on the Packers. So they're due for a positive regression. Do you think Baltimore pays Roquan Smith? And how does this affect the Lamar contract? Well, I don't think the Ravens make this trade if they felt it was going to impede their ability to resign Lamar. I think they're too smart for that. So I don't think that's a problem. But for a team that is so good at this compensatory pick formula, I can see a world where they view Roquan as a bit of a rental, let him go and get a 3rd-round pick back in a year. I think they re-sign him. I think that's probably why they made that trade, but I wouldn't be stunned. I'd say maybe a 5% chance that they just let him go and get a 3rd-round pick. That would probably be in the world where he kind of struggles for them. But I don't think he's going to struggle. I think he's going to play well. All right, Tanner, this is our last super chat unless we get any other ones here. Most shocking game from this past weekend. Shocking game. I mean, the Browns crushing the Bengals was very shocking. And I think the Raiders, I expected more from the Raiders. I had really been backing the Raiders, saying they were going to figure some stuff out. They played in a lot of close games, as tough as things have been for them. Before this week, they've been right in it against some really good teams. So I thought they would turn around and take care of business against the Saints. And they shit their pants. So that was probably the biggest surprise. They were one of my picks this week. So I think I would go with those 2. All right, we are all caught up with the super chats, and I think we are going to get out of here. Epic stream, you guys. I am definitely going to clip that Packers rant. If you missed it, glad we got that out. You'll be able to catch this whole thing back on the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. Just one more reminder to head over to the YouTube channel and subscribe there so you don't miss our weekly podcast there. It's been a riot. It's been a lot of fun moving over to the other channel. I'm glad we did that from a business perspective, but super fun stream. Thank you everybody for joining me here tonight, this afternoon, and peace out. That's all we got. Cheers. Oh, and thank you for the super chats, everybody. You guys are amazing. Your support is incredible. But peace.